Hi everyone, welcome to design number 2. Now we'll be using sinamay for this design. Before I start making my sinamay fascinator, I love to mix my stiffener. Now a stiffener is a type of PVC glue and it's white, just like you see in the plates there. So you're going to add a little bit of water to make it light. Now people make the mistake of using thick stiffener when blocking sinamay fascinators. If you do that, you're going to end up with white patches on your fascinators because most of the sinamay that is sold in Nigeria comes already pre-stiffened, meaning from the factory it has already been stiffened. Now you see, I'm using a spoon to mix mine. If you look closely, you'll discover that it's not thick. Please, your sinamay already has some stiffener in it. That's the reason why you can use it to make shapes, loops, circles, whatever you want to make with it. And that's another reason why you shouldn't apply too much of stiffener when you are blocking a fascinator. Now I'm doing all of this mixing because I don't want to have cocoa. If you're in Nigeria, you know what cocoa is. You have tiny specks of white stiffener. You don't want that on your sinamay at all. So you're going to mix it till it's a very smooth consistency and it's not thick. Now watch, let me carry up for you guys to see. So that spoon, you're not going to use it again. Yeah, can you see the consistency? It's not thick at all. And I'll be using the foam method to apply my stiffener. I'm applying a little bit of water now because it's a little bit thick. Now when you're done doing that, the next step is to block your sinamay. But before we block our sinamay, let's cut some sinamay on the bias that I'll be using to design this piece. Alright, now I'm sure you can see the consistency of the stiffener. Once you get it, it's time to go. Let's dive in. So I bought 1 yard of this red colored sinamay and I divided it into 2 equal halves. In front of me is the 2 equal halves. I want you to see them. So I'm going to remove one. One we'll be using to make the loops and whatever it is we want to use as the design on our fascinator. Now, don't forget that I said sinamay already comes pre-stiffened. That's why it's hard. But if it's not stiffened, it's not going to be hard. It will be like princess mat. If you have an idea of how princess mat is, that's how a sinamay that's not stiffened from the factory comes. Yeah, but this is stiffened. Okay, so I'll be making use of 1/2. Okay. Now, when you get your sinamay, you see that thick part I'm cutting off, you have to remove it. When you're done doing that, then you're going to fold your sinamay like a scarf, or simply put, fold it into a triangle to get the bias. The bias of the sinamay is what allows it to stretch. So watch closely. I've just folded it like a triangle now, and I'll be using that triangle to make loops that I'll use for my design. You can make square from it, you can make rings from it, you can make circles from it. Whatever you do, if you're using the bias of a sinamay, it's going to stretch. So now I'll be measuring about 2 inches on the bias, and then I'm going to fold it. Don't forget that I folded this into 2. So I have 2 triangles on the table, yeah, but I did not cut it. So I'm folding my 2 inches now. Ensure that you get the appropriate and the correct 2 inches. Once you get your correct 2 inches, measure again to be sure that it is 2 inches. So it must be 2 inches from the beginning till the end. So once you're sure that you've gotten your 2 inches, then you cut off from that sinamay. Don't forget, I did not cut the sinamay after folding into a triangle. So now I'm going to cut off so that when I open it, it will give me 4 inches. Okay, so this is 2 inches on fold. I think that's what tailors say, yeah? I'm correct, right? Okay. So I'm using my scissors to smoothen that, and then I'm going to cut it off. Once you cut it out, the next thing is for you to fold it and then iron. Now, the beauty about sinamay is the minute you iron it and you pull, it stretches. So when you apply steam on the sinamay, it makes it stretch. And then when you iron on top of it, it will seal it up, because like I said, sinamay already comes pre-stiffened from the factory. Okay, can you see? That is 4 inches. Now I will double fold on each side before I iron. Please don't forget that if you do not understand any part of this tutorial, please let me know by asking questions in the comments and questions group. Okay, so now I'm folding. First you fold a little bit and then you fold again. Now double folding is really important so that when you iron, it just seals everything up. Okay, so I'm double folding now, and I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. You can also fold up till the top part of that sinamay if you want. Now, I always tell people that when it comes to design in fascinator making, it is what you want. The design you have in your head that you want to bring to life, that's what comes to play. So there's no one size fits all when it comes to designing headpieces or fascinators. You bring your design to life. That is where your creative juice comes in. So I'm just double folding and then I'm going to iron. For the ironing part, if you have a steam iron, fine. If you don't, just use a spray bottle, spray a little bit of water, and then you iron. Once you do that, it will seal your sinamay. That's how you know a sinamay that is really good. Okay, so I want you to watch what I'm doing, and I'm going to show you now. Apply steam if you're using a steam iron, but if you don't have a steam iron, just spray a little bit of water, a little bit of water, or just sprinkle some water and then you iron. Once you apply heat and some water to your sinamay, it will seal the ends. Alright, so now I have used the heat to ensure that the double fold I did is sealed. Now, if you watch closely, I'm just trying to stretch that sinamay, yeah? So apply some steam or heat, then pull. As you iron, you are pulling it away from you. And you see the way I'm rolling it. What that does for me is, just in case I want to make loops in future, I can just cut out some sinamay on the bias and then roll. As I iron, I'm going to pull. That will stretch the sinamay, and then I'll roll and keep this for future purpose. But if you keep it straight, it will become so hard you might not be able to make loops again, especially if you're working with sinamay in harmattan period. So now that I have rolled this, I'm just going to keep it aside and cut another sinamay on the bias to make some really slim and tiny loops. By now, I'm sure we all know how to cut sinamay on the bias, and we know that you can only make a bias strip by cutting the sinamay on the bias. So I want to make a very slim bias strip. If you see from what I'm cutting, it's really slim because I want it to be very tiny. So you see, this is just by measurement. It's your discretion. What do you want to do? That's what's most important. So I'm going to fold it into 2 equal halves. When I'm done doing that, then I will open it up, then fold one side into the middle, and then fold the other side into the middle. Okay, just like that, exactly. And then I'm going to do the same thing to the other side and iron. So my sinamay strip my bias strip will be very slim. Now, did I tell you that you can use your bias strip to close the edge of your sinamay fascinator or your sinamay hat? God, I love this material called sinamay. It is absolutely beautiful and very versatile. So put it on, put your iron, apply some steam. Okay, you see that? So it seals it up when you apply some steam. Apply steam or spray water on the sinamay and then seal. Now, iron again, and this time pull it, stretch it to make it really slim, and then roll it and keep it. I'm rolling this and I'm keeping this because I want to make some loops out of it to use as my design on the fascinator. I hope you've enjoyed every step and process that I took. I'll see you in step 2. Hi everyone, and welcome to step 2. Now this is the fascinator block, that's the back, and this is the front, and we will be blocking this fascinator. But before we do that, we need to measure. If you're a beginner and this is your first time of making a fascinator, you need to measure your block. After you become an expert, then you don't need the measurements. So I like to take in 2 inches on the back, then take the tape rule all the way to the other side. Okay, this is because when you're blocking for the first time, you need to have enough material to work with. When you become an expert, you really don't need to measure like me. So 2 inches in from the first side and 2 inches again to the end. That gives me 11 inches. So I'm going to be cutting 3 pieces of sinamay. 3 pieces of sinamay. I know people are used to using 2, but I like to use 3 pieces of sinamay for my blocking. What that does for me is it makes the headpiece look rich. So can you see that 11 inches and I have 3 pieces. Now this red, if you're going to use 2 to block, by the time you're done blocking, your fascinator will be looking very transparent, yeah, because you use 2 pieces. But when you use 3 pieces, the color will come out more and it will look rich. But yes, know that you're going to price this very well if you're using 3 pieces. Now I'm going to take that sinamay and then make it damp by soaking it in water. Okay, so soak it in water, squeeze out the excess water. It shouldn't be dripping wet, it should just be damp. The reason is because it makes it easy for you to stretch the sinamay when you need to block. You know, if you need some part to stretch, then it makes it easy. But when it's dry, it's going to be too hard and then you end up using excess stiffener when it's not necessary. Next thing, you take your block, put the nylon on it. If you have a cling film, that's better. Then tie your nylon at the back of the block, please, not in front of it. Okay, and when you're done doing that, the next step is to take oil, petroleum jelly, ororo, machine oil, anything oil, okay, and then rub it on that block. Don't go and pour the oil on it, just rub it a little, yes? Okay, when you're done rubbing, it's time for us to start blocking, so get ready. All right, so I'm bringing out my sinamay from the water and I'm squeezing the excess. Can you see how I'm squeezing it out? You're not going to take it and start squeezing it out like a straw, like a dress. Don't forget, this is straw material, okay? So you need to be gentle. Okay, all right, so that's what it looks like when it's done. It's now time for us to block. When you're done squeezing the water out, ensure that you get out your thumbtacks or your push pins or whatever pin it is you want to use and get ready to block. That's my thumbtack on the table by the left-hand side. Let's get blocking. Now, taking your damp sinamay, the 3 pieces, don't forget, 3 pieces of sinamay. You can use 2. 2 is the standard, 1, 2 pieces, but I like to use 3 because it makes my sinamay color come out really, really rich. Okay, so I'm cleaning my hands because they're wet. Now, you're going to place the 3 pieces of sinamay on the block. Make sure that the block is in the middle. Can you see that? Make sure it's in the middle. Then you make sure that the pieces of sinamay, they're all equal. You don't want anyone being shorter than the other. Now, you're going to block in a cross form. I just picked 2 parts. Opposite, you're going to do the north, east, west, and south. I hope I got that correctly. Okay, so push 2 pins in. Okay, so 2 pins in, turn it to the other part, push 2 pins in again. Once you've done that part, then open up and do the other 2 parts. Okay, so just think of the sign of the cross. All right, so when you are done putting the second part, turn it over to look at it, see how smooth it is. Yeah, so it's time for you to continue putting the pins till you get to the end and you have finished blocking all of the, as in blocking the sinamay properly on the fascinator. If you watch closely, I'm making use of my thumb a lot, my left hand, ensuring that my thumb holds down the sinamay as I put the pin. Okay, don't forget that you need to be careful when you are doing this. Don't pull and overstretch. Yeah, just pull, use your thumb to adjust, pull, use your thumb to pull it down, put the pin again, fix it, pull, use your thumb to adjust, check the sinamay, the ones inside, to be sure that they are all equal. You're going to do this till you get to the end of the fascinator block. And by the time you are done, you must have a smooth looking fascinator without what do they call that thing? I don't say crocro, but like, is it frills? Oh God, Jesus Christ. English. Anyways, just ensure that it is smooth. I cannot find the word right now, but just ensure that exactly you don't have creasing. Creasing is the word I'm saying. Okay, can you see how smooth that is? Oh my God, gorgeous. You see how the edges are smooth? That is what a properly blocked fascinator should look like. Now I'm going to cut off the excess sinamay and keep it because it might come in handy. I hope you've enjoyed every step it took me to get here. Don't forget that if you have any questions, I'm here to answer them for you. Okay, so I'm going to cut off the excess outside the pins. Now I want you to see the consistency of my stiffener. Can you see that it's not thick? Now using the foam method, you get a small foam and dampen it with water, dip it in your stiffener and then apply on your already blocked fascinator. Can you see what I'm doing? Take that and then dab. That's what you're going to do throughout, just like that. And because your sinamay is damp, it's going to absorb the stiffener very well, unlike if your sinamay is dry. If it's dry, you'll be using so much stiffener, but because it is damp, it will absorb the stiffener very well. And because sinamay already comes pre-stiffened, that is why you don't need to be using a very thick stiffener on your sinamay for your sinamay blocking. Okay, apply the stiffener on every part, even on the underneath of your fascinator. You see, once there's a pin there, apply that stiffener there. Apply it very, very well. But please, don't pack excess. Now, one of the things that I love about this foam method is, once you discover that you might have added excess excess stiffener on your sinamay, you can use the foam and soak it back in. You understand? Just apply the foam and apply pressure. It will soak in the stiffener, or just rub it vigorously on the sinamay and to soak it up. So you can apply excess, you can take it back, okay, by rubbing it off the sinamay. All right, so I'm done applying my sinamay, my stiffener, and I'll be sending it out for drying. So I'm taking off the excess with the foam. Can you see why I love this method? All right, see you in step 3. So while we wait for our sinamay to get dried, I've gone ahead to make plenty loops. Can you see? I made this a while ago and I just kept them. So now I want to make a bow out of this, coil some sinamay out of this, just create my design for my fascinator. So watch what I'm doing. I'm going to take that and I'm going to scrunch it together. Yeah, and then take another part, scrunch it together to make the first bow. Now, you see what I said, that keeping it in its coiled form will be useful for you when you want to use it in future. Yeah, so I'm going to take the other part, turn it over. The beauty of sinamay is it follows you as you swirl it. I think that's the right word. Yeah, so you take that and then scrunch that part together. And if you are satisfied with it, then you can use a needle and thread to sew it together. I know some people will opt for gluing, but I'm very I prefer to sew. Sewing makes your headpiece last a lifetime. Okay. So taking my needle and thread, I'm satisfied. I'm going to sew that together. Now, when you're sewing, please avoid bulky sewing. What I mean is just take note of the points where you need to hold and you sew. Don't sew in, out, in, out, in, out 10 times. No, attach 2, 3, 4 times and then you tie. And then wait for whatever it is you want to add next to that bow. So next, I'm taking another sinamay bias strip. I'm going to cut off the edges and then try and form something out of this. All of these things that I have done, everything is going to go into this fascinator to create the design the picture of the design that I have in my mind. Can you see what I formed? Just doing this alone and attaching it to this bow can give you something lovely that you attach to an Alice band, and that becomes a headpiece. You can also take another coiled sinamay bias strip, then just roll it. You can roll it on something if you like. You can decide to use your fingers just the way I'm doing it. But you see that first step you took to iron the sinamay together, as in to iron the sinamay to form this bias strip, that's very important. Now you see the way I'm coiling it. Once I'm done coiling it, I'm going to hold it together in my palm. When you do that, it generates heat. So the heat in your palm is going to help that sinamay coil. Now watch closely to see what I'm doing, okay? Hold it in your palm. Allow that heat to swim inside of your palms. Don't mind me. Just hold it and allow, the sinamay to enjoy the warmth inside of your palms. Open it up. Now release it, and then you have a very beautiful coil. Ooh, gorgeous. Now leave this. You can add this to your headpiece too. On the fascinator base. Just do a lot of this, and that is how design is born. That is how creativity works. There's no one size fits all to creating headpieces. I hope that by the end of this course, your mind will be open and your eyes will be open to all the beautiful things you can create using this luxury material called sinamay. Okay, so let's continue. Our fascinator is dried now. Alright, so I have removed all the pins. Now it's time for me to pull out the fascinator. So watch what I'm doing. I'm taking the edges, like that top part, and I'm just spreading it out. Yeah? And when you are done, please don't distort the shape. You see? I've removed it and I'm going to cut off that excess. Can you see how rich the color is? As opposed to using just 2 pieces of sinamay. Okay, so I'm just cutting off the excess now, because we don't want to have too much of that. So every time I cut, I fold to see how it looks so that I don't have excess too much, yeah? Okay, so I'm deciding to cut off some more because your wire is going to stay on that sharp point. When you're done cutting, just press it in and fold. Okay, so it's time for us to add our millinery wire to the fascinator base. So before I do that, I always like to use my fingers to, fold it, push it in so it forms like a really small circle before I make it round, yeah? So you're just pushing it with the wire. Once you're done doing that, you're going to place, oh God, look at that rich red. Woohoo! Okay, another thing I want you to notice, can you see that we don't have any patches of stiffener? Yeah? Yes. Okay, so you're going to take the wire, and then this is how I do it. I place it on top of that place because that spot inside is where the wire will sit in to make this shape solid. So I'm going to place it on the wire, and you're doing this in a crisscross mode. What that means is the wires will be crisscross. Can you see that extension out there? You need another one because you use paper tape to wrap each end. When you cut off, I'm going to cut now using my plier. Cut off at that point. Now when you're done cutting, then you are going to hold the wire on each end. Please watch closely. It's very important. Hold the wire on each end before you fix it in. You will be using paper tape to glue them together. Please let your paper tape not be bulky. I'll be dividing that into two while I'm holding the circle I created for that for the fascinator base. Yeah, you see, I fold it into two. Take one end, use the paper tape to wrap it, and ensure that you're holding this really tight so that it holds it very well. You can also use thread if you like, but I will use paper tape here. Then take the other end and use your fingers to curve it a little bit. Now, when you have curved it, you take the second paper tape, the other half, and then wrap it. Now, once you're done doing that wrapping, you are now going to use your fingers to ensure that this circle is perfect. Yes, I know there's nothing like perfection, but then almost perfect. Okay, so you see, I'm using my fingers to guide the wire so that it's circular, like it's really, really round, because we're dealing with a round fascinator. And when you have done that and you are satisfied with what you have, the next thing is to open up your fascinator just like that and then put the wire inside. Once you put the wire inside, then you put your hand again in the fascinator and push that wire into that sharp end where the millinery wire should sit. Can you see what I'm doing using my fingers? Push it upward. You push it upward. And when you're done doing that, you fold down again because you want to be sure that the wire is perfect for the fascinator. And the only way you can be sure is when you're done, you hold it like so and bounce it. Can you see? Perfect. Okay, it's time for us to glue that down and then move to the next step. Use UHU for this part. I did not have UHU, so I had to settle for B7000. You see the way I'm opening it up? You are going to ensure you apply that glue generously on the edges, that part that is going to go down when you close it. Ensure you apply the glue generously on that part all the way around. Now, when you are done doing that, you need to wait for about 6 or 7 seconds. Now, how do you know the glue is ready? You're going to fold in. If it is seeping out of the other side, that means if the glue is still wet, then it's not ready. So after about some seconds or 20 seconds and it's ready, the glue will not be so wet. Okay, then you can now start folding. As you fold in, ensure you press it down and use your thumb to smoothen it. You need to smoothen it so that the glue interacts with the other side of the sinamay, and that is how you're going to seal it. Okay, I hope you understand this step. Please, if you have any questions for this design or on this step, drop them in the questions and comments group. Now look at how smooth and beautiful the inner part of my fascinator is. Now you can also use your sinamay bias strip to seal that fascinator, the inner part, or you use a ribbon. I'll be using a ribbon to do the sealing. All right, see you in step 4. All right, so time to add our elastic band. Now, if you want to use an Alice band for this one, it's fine. But I like to use an elastic band because moving the headpiece side by side is very, very easy. Moving it to the far left, to the far right is very easy. Now, because my head size is really big, I'm using this Alice band. I think it's 1/2 inch Alice band, yes. And I measured about 14 inches, into 2, which is 28 inches. Then I folded it into, because I want the elastic band to be thick. Now I'm going to attach the elastic band to the fascinator base and then sew it. After that, the next step is to add all of the sinamay bow, the sinamay loop, whatever it is you want on the fascinator. Okay, let's do that. All right, so when I'm done attaching the thread to the elastic band, if you watch closely, I left a little bit, maybe, I don't know, like say 2 dots away from the elastic band before I started sewing. So I'm going to sew on one side, yeah, put the needle in, then sew. When you're done doing that, you do the same thing to the second side of the fascinator. All right, so your stitching, please, it has to be as light as possible. If there's one thing you notice, especially when you're stitching from the outside, ensure that your thread does not come out too much. Like that part where I'm putting the needle in, I did not stretch my hand before taking the needle in, so that way you cannot really see my thread. Okay, all right, so when you're done with that part, you tie and then you move to the next step. So I have sewn my elastic on opposite sides. They're on opposite sides. Look at that. Opposite sides of each other, and they're solid. You will not see my stitching all over the place. Now, once you're done doing that, the next step is to determine where you're going to put your design. Personally, I like my designs to always be on the left-hand side. I'm more comfortable having my fascinator on the left-hand side. So I'm going to move the fascinator to my styrofoam mannequin to determine which position is perfect for me. Okay, so I know it looks like it's on the right hand side, but when I turn it, can you see that it's on the left hand? So that's what I'm working with. But when it faces me, it looks like it's on the right hand because it's easier for me to work that way. All right, so once you put your fascinator on your styrofoam mannequin, you need to determine where your design is going to be. Do you want it at the back, on the side, whatever you want it to be? Determine it, and when you've gotten that place, just put a pin there or a big needle. Okay, so I'm going to use the big needle and pin it down. Yes, make sure that it passes through the fascinator. Once you've done that, then you can pull it off of the styrofoam mannequin and then start stitching. I know some people will say, oh, can I use hot glue to glue this? I'm not a fan of gluing sinamay on hot glue. If you want to, it's fine. But for me, I like to stitch. Stitching ensures that your headpiece lasts a lifetime. Okay, especially when you do it right. Okay, let's continue. Now, this is where the design process starts, yeah? So I'm going to stitch that by taking the needle in. You're going to tie it when you're done, because I didn't tie it earlier. You tie it, yeah? Then hold with your thumb go in and ensure that you're not going to shift your hand too far. You must ensure that your stitches are centered. Okay, all right, so I'm going to take that extra, pass the needle through it, and that's how I do my first tying. Tie very well. This the thread is four strands of thread. That's two. When you fold it into two, becomes four. That's how you thread your needle. Okay, so once you have gotten that, take it in about 2 or 3 times. Ensure that you stay centered. Okay, so when you're done stitching this first one, then you can now start adding the slim sinamay bias that you have coiled before, the one you wanted to make like an S. That's where the whole creative juice comes in. Okay, so and you're going to be stitching everything. There's no part of this place where I'm going to glue anything. The only part I'll be gluing is when I want to cover the middle after I have stitched, and when I want to seal the edges using either Petersham or a metallic ribbon. Okay, so this part is just trying out different things. I can make different coils to see how they look on the headpiece. If I don't like it, I do another one again. But this is only possible because the first time we ironed and then we rolled it and we kept it. If you have just ironed it and kept it straight, I bet you won't be able to coil it like this. You will have to apply heat again before you'll be able to coil it like this. But because I rolled it, I can coil it even without applying heat. So I want to make like an 8, yeah? When I do that 8, I'll stitch it, put it on the side there, stitch it. So I'm just going to keep sewing and adding things. Do whatever comes to your mind. You mustn't do exactly what I do. And I've noticed that a lot of millionaires are afraid to experiment. Look, if you don't experiment, if you don't try, you'll never give birth to a stunning headpiece. And that's the reason why those stunning headpieces you see is time put into practicing, maybe 2 hours a day, 3 hours a day, 1 hour a day, depends on whatever time it is that you want to use. Just you can be flexible with it. Okay, so just keep stitching, and that's exactly what I'm going to do till I arrive at the design that I want. I did not have any particular design in mind before doing this. I just said I'm going to go with the flow, and this is how I'm going with the flow. Trust me when I tell you that this is not rocket science. Can you see how I added that? To look at it, see what it's going to give me. If I like it, then I sew it on. Don't forget that all the while I'm sewing, my stitches are centered. Look at the middle. It's not all over the place. Let it remain centered, because that's the place where you might likely put your they call it tag, clothes tag or something that has your name with your number and everything. So that will help cover that stitching. So I'm cutting off now because I'm satisfied with what I have. And then I'm going to tie, just separate into 2 and tie. So I discovered these ostrich quills while I was looking around. So I said I'm going to add it to this headpiece because I really love the ostrich quills, the way I coiled them. And that's why in headpiece making, nothing is a waste. Even something you kept about 3-4 years ago might still be useful tomorrow. So first of all, you determine where you are going to fix that and then sew. Now, taking your big needle, create a hole. Just, you see the way I'm winding my fingers till it comes out. Then, when you pull out, you wait, tie the end. Now, you're going to pass that needle in between that thread. That's your first tie. Now, some people use hot glue to attach their ostrich quills. It's fine. It's totally fine, but I like to sew because see, when it comes to stitching, you can brag to your client that this thing is the real deal. It's solid and it's going to be solid forever. That is the beauty of stitching. And if you notice something about my fascinator, you will not see my stitches because I try as much as possible to hide my stitching. Okay, so I have placed it in the spot where I want. Now my needle is out on the other side. Pull out, take back in again to come out on top, yeah, and then sew again. So I'm stitching about 3 or 4 times. Like I said, there's no one size fits all to making fascinators. Allow your creative juice flow, and trust me, you will be shocked at what you're going to produce. You will be shocked at what you're going to produce. I know that you can do this. Okay, don't allow fear hold you back. I know you can do this. So I'm trying to create a hole in the ostrich quill again, and then I'm going to sew it. So it's the same process that I'll use for the second ostrich quill. When I stitch, you see that I didn't stitch so much, and my coils of the sinamay coils are still there, looking super stunning and beautiful. All right, so I'm going to sew the second one and then show you what it looks like. So after sewing, I discovered another sinamay coil, and I'm going to add that as my covering for the fascinator. Now, don't forget, we didn't use all the sinamay. I still have some that I can use to create a simple headpiece, to make sinamay lilies, to make sinamay cubes, and attach to my headpieces. Yeah, and don't forget, I didn't use all the glue. I didn't use all of the, what again did we use for this headpiece? The stiffener. I still have some remaining. So when you want to make other things, you still have stiffener, you still have some pieces of sinamay that can help you in your design and so on. Yeah, and that's exactly one thing I love about fascinator making, you have leftovers that you can use for something else tomorrow. So this is gorgeous, isn't it? See you in the next step. When you're done sewing the second ostrich quill and you're satisfied with what the design looks like, then you cut. Now don't forget, all of our stitching was centered. That's the most important thing here. All the stitching was centered. All right, so once you're done, cut off and then tie. How do we tie? Just separate the thread after cutting into two and then tie. Ensure that you tie down, tie the second, third and fourth time, and then you can cut off. Now, if there's one thing you will notice about this fascinator, it is very neat. I don't have stiffener patches all over because I didn't pack stiffener on it. My stiffener was really light, it wasn't thick. And that's the only reason why the inner part is looking as beautiful as this. I used 3 layers of sinamay instead of 2. Now that makes the color also pop out and it makes it look rich. Now, if I want, I can decide to line this fascinator or not to line it. And I'm not going to line it, okay? Look how gorgeous that is. You can decide to stone this or add some beads to it if you like. Now it's time for us to close the inner part of our fascinator. If you have UHU glue, then perfect. But if you don't, you can also use the B7000 glue. Just take it around the inner corners. Touch those places. You know, you folded the sinamay in. I'll be using this metallic ribbon. I bought this pack for about 1,002 and it's going to last me for a really long time, okay? All right, so the glue is almost dried. Once I check and it's not sticky and not wet, then I'm ready. It's ready for use. Now, taking that ribbon, you're going to apply it. Now, if you notice, I did not apply the glue directly on the ribbon. No. If you do that, it's going to dirty your headpiece, because you'll be touching the ribbon constantly. So you apply the glue to the sinamay fascinator base, the inner part of it, that place where you folded when you put the wire, the end where it ended, you're going to start closing it up from there. And in order for you to do a neat job, you need to wait for the glue to get dried a little bit. Once it's not sticky and wet, then you can now use your ribbon to cover it. And what I love so much about B7000 glue is just give this about 2 or 3 hours. I'm telling you, it will seal like iodide. Very, very wonderful glue to use. So I'm just putting this round from the beginning to the end. I'm going to cut off where it ends because I'm overlapping. Yeah, so that little part I will be overlapping it. You can also use sinamay bias strip for this part. You can also use Petersham ribbon if you like. You can use trimmings if you like. If you have a flat trimming, you can also use it. Okay, so I'm going to add a little bit of glue to that excess which I overlapped and then cover it, seal it, and fini. The next part you'll be covering is that center where we stitched. Now, if you have your business name tag, that stuff that's like a cloth that has your business name, your phone number, and everything written on it, I think it's called the cloth tag. You can also glue it to that spot and cover that place. And when you're done, your fascinator is ready. Isn't that simple? Yes, I broke down the steps into 5, but I did that because I needed you to see every step it took me to get to this point. And that's the reason why I had to make a very detailed tutorial. So now I'm going to take a felt disc. I got this in the market. I've forgotten how much for, but it's not expensive. Then I'm going to take my B7000 glue and apply it generously on the felt disc, then wait for it to get dry. I couldn't just keep it down, so I used my mouth and just blew some breeze. You get the drift, yeah? Okay, so after blowing breeze or leaving it to get dry, just cover up that part where your stitching took place. Look at how neat the inside of this fascinator is. Awesome, fantastic, beautiful. Please clap for me. Bah, 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 bah. Bravo to me. Thank you guys for choosing so far. I'll see you in a future tutorial.